work shouldn't be the hardest part of people's lives. And it should be a joy to come and contribute. And it should have ease, and it should be humane and not designed for a robotic adherence to productivity standards that crush good people. And that was the heart of the work.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. I am your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be a great one. Our guest is the CEO of the Juliet Funt Group, a training and consulting firm that helps organizations, their leaders, and employees flip the norms of business in order to reclaim their creativity, productivity, and engagement. She's also the author of A Minute to Think, Reclaim Creativity, Conquer Business, and Do Your Best Work. Juliet Funt, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Great to have you. And, I always love having an episode where we step back and go, wait a second, are we doing what's best? Are we sharpening the saw? Can't wait to get into that. Juliet, tell us about your career journey leading up to this point.
Sure. I spent about 10 years as a keynote speaker on the circuit, consulting and speaking on the topic that we'll talk about. And then we translated that IP into a company and training programs, and we built a company. And then for about 10 years, we've been in organizations making measurable change, helping people have a better experience of work, removing some of the waste. We call it the decrapification of work, helping them have less emails, meetings, decks, reports, and measuring those transitions. And so that's been the last 20 years.
Wow. So you've been in this.
This is it, baby. This is my lane. I have one lane. I always think it's interesting when the author comes up with the next book that's the completely different topic, because I think I'll be talking about this for the rest of my career. This is definitely my passion and my expertise.
We talk about lanes a lot, the whole niche idea, and it's powerful. It really is powerful, and you're proving that yourself. But I think you can go so deep into something, and then that's where the value comes from, and so I'm excited to hear more about that. I'm always curious, love asking about in your growing your business and growing your career. What were some of the obstacles that you had to overcome?
So many. The transition from speaker to company owner was probably the hardest one. And I will admit we made that transition reactively in a way that I look back and wish there'd been a little more thoughtfulness. We had a giant client who said after a speech, hey, how do we scale this content? And we scrambled and we hired consultants and we built programs. And it was really in response to their need that we built a company. And if I had it to do over again, I would have gone back and said, what do I want to build? When do I want to build it? How do I want to build it? And now, 10 years later, post-book, I'm actually getting I don't know if you're a golfer, I'm getting a mulligan on this one now, where I actually right now am doing exactly what I wish I'd done 10 years ago. In fact, I was just at a retreat center 2 days ago, just no computer, sitting with a piece of paper, looking out on a blue sky, and just really trying to figure out what should the next chapter be like. And I do wish I'd done that before. It's an imperfect path to get to building a company, but it started a little bit in response to others' desires as opposed to our vision.
That's interesting. I'd imagine there's many who are listening right now thinking the same thing.
Sure.
Hindsight's always 20/20. And having gone through that and built that business, now where you're at, you're actually reinventing it, which is interesting. So it'll be interesting to see what you come up with.
Yes, the concept we talk a lot about internally is something we call the corporate shadow, which is when you're early in a B2B path. And I don't know what percentage of your listeners are B2B, so we'll be cautious about how long to spend there. But you can very easily begin to adopt a slightly artificial persona to speak into the corporate world. Corporate language and talking about metrics and scalability and alignment, and these words start creeping into you that really can take you away from the mission. And one of the wonderful things about writing the book is the book took me all the way back to the red heart epicenter of the work, which is work shouldn't be the hardest part of people's lives. And it should be a joy to come and contribute. And it should have ease, and it should be humane and not designed for a robotic adherence to productivity standards that crush good people. And that was the heart of the work before that proving ourselves corporate shadow kind of crept in there. And the book has also given us permission now to move away from that, which has been wonderful.
Very cool. So tell me a little bit about busyness. And you have that play on words, busy and business.
Yeah, busyness is costing us business. So that's where they go together. We spend a lot of the day in fake work and nonsense work and showing off work and mindless work. And most people that we survey in companies that we work in say that there's about 30% of their day that is neither adding value to them or value to the business. And that should be an unsustainable emergency that has a senior leader jumping up and down looking for a solution. But there's also a really super huge amount of complacency. And that's not what happens. And that's probably the primary fascination of my job and my work is on an individual level. How are we so tolerant of the misery of work? And on a corporate level, how are executives so tolerant of the waste?
It's interesting because, I mean, small business is one thing. It happens there, but I think it's smaller, so you can sort of see where the leaks maybe are in the boat because it's a small boat, and you notice if it goes up a little bit or down. But if you're in a massive boat, there could be a massive leak at the other end, and you don't even know. And even trying to plug those holes, it's like, oh boy, it can be a little bit overwhelming. Do you find that is happening with the people that you do work with? What has them not take these things on?
There's social conformity, which is that we're really used to work feeling this way. And there's the insatiability of our culture where more is always better. So more communications and more decks and more information and more scoreboards and dashboards must be better because it's more. So I think that we fall prey to a lot of cultural leanings that then affect us as business people. In smaller companies, boutique, solopreneur, entrepreneur, there is definitely less waste, but there's also less permission to really slow down and make sure that everything that you touch is of meaning. Because there's a frenzy that I've experienced, and I know a lot of experienced entrepreneurs experience, just this panic, the panic to grow, to get work out, to make payroll, all the pressures of being a small business. And your bookkeepers are people who hold the hand of the executive or the creative while they're trying to get through that process. There's so much pressure for small businesses that can lead to frenzy. And frenzy is not a mindful state where we can make good choices.
Isn't that true? Let's talk a little bit about that because I think that gets skipped over, the cost of being busy and how it impacts our creativity. And then how does that impact where a business goes?
Yes, there are neurological costs because our frontal lobe doesn't work well when it doesn't have downtime. So that's the executive center of the brain that does a lot of important things. And if we exhaust it, it can't function. So there's also the creativity cost, which is we're trying to sit and cook up the next phase of our businesses and ideas and products and client service ideas, but we get stuck in grooves. And when you step back and you give yourself more space in the day when there's less busyness, a wonderful thing happens called beneficial forgetting, where you step away from the orientation that you were in. And then when you return, even if it's 2 minutes or 5 minutes later, you're returning with fresher eyes to the creative challenge ahead of you. So there's so many costs of business. I will also say that there's a huge cost personally. And chapter 11 of the book, my favorite chapter of the book, is all about what happens when we don't have enough space and we have too much busyness at home. And there's huge price paid there as well.
Yeah, that's the truth. And really the whole point of why we're in business likely is to provide for our families. And yet in many cases, it actually does the opposite.
It's been an interesting split since COVID. I think some people are reporting that they have had a wake-up call of the ability to be present at home. They've removed commutes and they've had more proximity, and they can go meet the bus at 3:00 and make a grilled cheese and then go back to work. And it's a glorious thing. But there's also been an intense increase in free-floating anxiety, which leads to a lot of busy work because we don't know what to do with ourselves. So we might as well send 10 more emails, which then have 10 more email babies, and they propagate forward from there. So there's two sides of the COVID equation. It's been really fascinating to watch.
No doubt. I've never heard email babies.
They do. They're like rabbits, baby. You send them out there, they just keep making more of each other.
They're like those gremlins from the movie.
Yes.
Was it Water?
Water. I guess maybe water could be the CC line. I have to think about how to translate the gremlins analogy.
Yes. No, absolutely. And it's a good point. I was speaking with somebody recently, I think it was on one of the episodes recently, about the fact that this whole concept of work, we've all been in this massive global shift because we've had to, where it isn't 9 to 5 anymore. And then, well, what is it now? That's what it was. It was Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary.
Oh, yeah.
I saw a clip on TikTok where he was saying, we're not living in a 9 to 5 world. We're living in an outcome world. It's like he doesn't care about hours. He cares about, what are you giving me with your time? I need these outcomes in my business. What are you doing? So that can be, I think, tough for people who haven't been assigned outcomes. They've been assigned time. But if you now all of a sudden have control of your time and you can get those outcomes done quickly, then what do? I got my hands in my pocket.
That's a wonderful delineation. I'm sitting here writing down assign outcomes, not time, to share that with others, because we don't, we used to talk a lot about wanting to get businesses back to Dolly Parton hours, that if the whole world could just work 9 to 5, then we would have this liberty. And I do think that flex work and all the flexibility that's sprouted up has a lot of positives, but it also has made turning work off way, way, way harder, because when you take that break to go meet the bus and then make the grilled cheese sandwich, you don't likely make up for that with the same amount of time before or after work. You might work 2 hours after the kids go to bed with the laptop, just because this free floating confusion about when work is supposed to be an on switch and an off switch. So that has definitely gotten much more complicated. The organized version of what you're referring to, which Kevin O'Leary referred to, is called a ROW work environment, results only work environment, or ROW. That's how we run our company. We don't care where you work or when you work or how much time you take off, but you need to produce results. And if that could be articulated more often in companies, I think it would give people a lot of liberty that you're describing.
No, absolutely. So ROW, and I haven't heard of it that way. How does it work in your business? What's that been like? I would imagine many of our listener right now would be interested in that. They run small teams, small and medium teams. They consult and work with many businesses of that size. And this is cutting edge.
So there's a lot to it. We are actually now in a 1-year experiment with a 4-day work week internally. We were very inspired by Michael Hyatt's 6-hour day, which Michael Hyatt is a huge productivity guru with a big team. He's a passionate advocate of the 6-hour day. And we played with that, and we decided that the 4-day week made more sense for us. So we have synchronized rest on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That means there's a synchronized period where your little spidey sense can't feel other people working. And that's why it's hard to take time off. Let's say you're a flex worker and you work from 7 to 3. And then from 3 to 5, you're technically off because you worked from 7 to 9, but you could kind of still feel in your gut all that activity that's going on from 3 to 5. And so you tend to check or just check one thing or take a sip of your email. So synchronizing when people rest is the other side of the argument about flex work. And teams need to really be in a creative dialogue about what's better. Is it better for me to work when I feel like working? Or is it better for us to all know that the circuits are dead before and after certain times so that we don't have to be wondering if we should check in?
Interesting. And how has it been going?
It's going wonderfully. We already had, for the entire 9 years of our company, a company that runs by row. We put that in every job application. We are a results-only work environment. What that means is projects need to move forward, deadlines need to be met, quality needs to be high. And other than that, I, as the CEO, don't care when or how long or where you work. And I think this is some of the antidote to this intense where conversation that we're having everywhere. Obviously, we have to talk about where post-COVID, where should we sit and where should we train and where should we keep real estate? But the how of work is the thing that connects people who work in different wheres. The how of the way we communicate, the way we think, our philosophies, our norms. We need to talk a lot more about the how.
Very interesting. As you were talking about, what that day looks like, the people start, they come, they go, the laundry, the kids, the this, the that.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. And in my case, we have offices in Australia, and so it's almost a 24-hour clock. And with the device, having a device now, we can be notified and look at, and it's almost it. And I would say I'm in that trap right now where I am looking at it too much, paying attention. The notifications, and I always feel on, and I find it difficult to actually unplug from it. I love what I do. That's both, but at some point, it's like I might not love it if I keep going at the rate that I'm at. I'm sure many listeners right now fall into that. It's like we're running our own business. We get the freedom to do that, to be able to build it, to go and be the captain of our ships. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if we do too much of that, has a consequence. And you're talking about the brain overload and how that impacts us. How do you've talked about this Friday, Saturday, Sunday synchronized rest time. Do people have a tough time with that? I'm sure there's people that love what they do in your business. Do they have a tough time shutting it off?
Well, it's more than they do, and it's more than loving what they do. It's that work has become a salve and an escape from all the other problems that we're facing. When you've basically finished Netflix and you can't stand your family anymore because you've been trapped in a house with them for 18 months, going into work can be very soothing. And I've definitely found times myself where something is bothering me or the ambiguity of the world. And wow, doing a nice little spreadsheet or working on a PowerPoint deck, it gives us a feeling of control and agency, and what I call before and after. I can do something, and an hour later, I've transformed something. And that is very, very gratifying. What we like to do is say that on those Friday off days, that if people want to pour themselves into a project, that they should pick a charitable one. And that we give them that first half day if they want to, instead of taking off, if they want something to kind of keep them going, they should pick a cause that they care about and do something wonderful on a service basis for them.
Very interesting. So tapping in a whole bunch of other opportunities by doing something that is outside of your business and also contribution to the community.
And your listeners might be sitting here identifying with your personal depiction of this always on. So one thing that could be fun if you want to spend about 5 minutes is we could do a little bit of coaching. People love to watch fishbowl coaching, which means one person gets coached and people sit around. So if you want to unpack a little bit more what is particularly challenging to you right now about this 24-hour cycle, we could play with some suggestions, and I bet everybody would learn a lot from that.
That'd be great.
Okay. So tell me a little bit more about your daily responsibilities and this international component and how it's getting in your way.
So we're growing the world's best place on the planet for bookkeepers.
Mm-hmm.
And that has the Successful Bookkeeper. The Pure Bookkeeping is the organization where we provide systems and process and standard operating procedures for bookkeeping firms. And so those two organizations and everything in between in Canada, the United States, and Australia. And I'm at the helm of most of it. We've been in business now for just a little over a decade. And as the business grows, it's each stage of the business. Each year, it's new things we're tackling. We're getting bigger. We're taking on new things, and then young family, everything going on with COVID, and so all of that combined. What I would say that, as you were speaking about it, it's almost like this. There's a lot to do. There's no end to do it. And I love what I do, and I love the work that I do, and it's consuming. I'm always thinking about, I'm creative, so I'm always thinking about different opportunities and ideas. And then I've got my cell phone, which is to, messages, people need this, that, other things going on, which again, it's an addiction to see, oh, ding, we got that, we did this, we accomplished that, we're moving here, that's happening there. And so that I find, to put it down, the phone down, can be almost, I'm trying to think of the word for it, but lately it's hard to shut it off. It's hard to just be present, even though I work at it, go walk with my children or go with my family. And on the weekends, I have moments, but a lot of the week, especially during the weekday, I'm constantly thinking about it.
Sure, of course you are, and it's your passion. So let's start with some basics. So the very first thing that I heard you say that jumped out is the ding. And what we want to do in order to have agency over our choices is to move toward a zero notification lifestyle. The reason that the way that you'll know if someone sent you an email is when you go into your email next, there'll be an email there. That's how you know that somebody sent you an email. So this pinging, dinging, little red circles of telling us what's coming in is just feeding this terrible dopamine cycle. If I could actually turn off every single little red circle on my phone, I would. But when you can move toward, look at all the places where notifications come in, especially the little bar that pops in your laptop or computer when an email arrives. We want those off. We want the banners off. We want as much as you possibly can so that when you're sitting down to think about what you do in the day, that you are the architect of that time. Another thing that can be really helpful is to consider an interval touching system for your technology. The phone is obviously enormously harder, but if you just start with your desktop or laptop to say, what are the intervals at which I could check email and have a little bit more of a sense of control? Is that every hour? Is it maybe every half hour? We like to prescribe what we call the email diet, which means you check your email at the same times as you might feed a hungry body, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and you get 2 snacks. So for regular professionals, that might be 9, 11, 1, 3, and 5. But as you adhere to some gentle format of interval checking, what you'll find is that these weird vacuums open up in between where you're not supposed to be checking email and you're not supposed to be touching your phone. And your first experience of it will probably be to sit at your desk and say, I don't even know what to do with myself. And that's when deep work has a chance, building a new market, thinking about what do bookkeepers need, really empathizing with that audience. Those things can't happen in the bifurcated time that comes from being chopped up from digital touches.
So interesting. True. Like as we're even having this conversation, it's the banners. Like I don't do the dings. I said ding. Yeah. But it's like, that's more in my brain when I see the banner. It's the banners because they come sliding across. Even
turn those off. Off.
And
Why
they're sneaky.
do you need a banner?
They're sneaky with those banners. It's like constantly, do you want this to, allow this, allow that? So that's what I'm going to do after this episode, after we record this. I'm going to shut off. I mean, the new Apple update recently, there's definitely a marked improvement because somehow automatically it limited a ton of stuff. So it used to be just this huge noise going on my phone. But then on my computer, I'm going to shut those, figure out how to shut those off, like Slack messages, email, new email in, all of that stuff. It's amazing how awful it is when I'm trying to do an episode of the podcast, because number one, it's like I feel it's probably I forget, what is it, the cortisone shoot up, because I see something and it's like this one that just came up was something, oh, I'm right on it. I'm like, right on what? Zoop. And so it's like, how can I be present with my guest, with you, when that's happening and these things? But I need my computer. I'm recording this. I got these things on. So banners are the evil
Banners
part
off.
here.
Goodbye, banners.
Goodbye, banners. So I got to clean
all
those
notifications
up.
off, dings, pings, zips, vibration off. That way you're in charge. And then the last component I'll tell you in this kind of basic starter kit, because I don't want to give you overwhelming amounts of things. You're going to turn the banners off. You're going to create an interval checking schedule for email. And then a lot of people will tell you in those intervals that are left that what you should do is time block. I'm sure you've heard of the term, or maybe have you heard of the term time blocking?
Definitely time block, yes.
Yeah. So time blocking in its worst form is someone opens up a white calendar and they block this and then 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 this, as if they were a robot, as if they could progress in a seamless way, task to task to task, and also as if they could interrupt creative flow with no consequence, that they're working on something great and bing, it's the top of the hour, so time to move on. Mm-hmm. So what we would revise that as for you is time sketching. Go through the calendar, put what you're thinking of doing. Also, a very important rule, never let those colors touch. We want slices of white in between meetings and tasks so that you can take a breath. But then if you're writing a proposal for how we should enlist the bookkeeper community of Europe, and you're on a roll and it's really exciting and it says 11 o'clock due LinkedIn, then maybe you don't. Maybe you keep going and then you revise the sketch. So a couple times during the day, you pause and you gently revise the sketch. So this is a gentle practice that allows you to still control some of that open, intimidating time, but not so rigidly.
I like it. I mean, I love time. I wouldn't even say it's time block. I love calendaring stuff. Like it, it's like I need to go to the dentist in my calendar. I need to do this on my calendar. And I do have blockouts there. But what I like about this is the flexibility and the sketching concept. I like that. And I think that when I think of the conversations we had on this podcast about time blocking, it's just sitting here thinking and listening to you, it's very rigid. It's like block.
Oh yeah.
Like block, block. Whereas,
and it's such a failure. It's such a ground for failure. Oh, I didn't finish and I didn't do it enough, or I did it too much, or I went 5 over. There's a lot of ways that you can be mad at yourself after a day of time blocking.
That's right. Well, I mean, it's pretty easy to fail when it's like, do this. Well, I don't know how long that's going to take exactly. And I've blocked that. And then now I have to stop. So I think number one, the intervals, the banners gone is going to provide less inputs. And it's kind of like, trying to think of what that feels like. But like now my cortisol level is going to obviously go down. The day I'm going to have more energy, right? Just from that. Just that alone, if I didn't have to react to those things, that alone would have more mental power by the end of the day. And then I like the concept of sketching and leaving white space. I think I do okay with the white space. That would be one area that I did that a while ago, was just I just blocked certain blocks throughout the week, because if people have access to a calendar, to my calendar, there were times where it's just there's no time to do anything but this, and some of it was busy work. Busyness, working busy in my busyness, right? And so those blocks really helped. And I guess that's kind of like the sketching, where I've like said, well, I'm going to do some work. I know what some work I need to accomplish is, and I'm going to do it there. If I don't feel like doing that, or it doesn't need to be done, I can flex.
Absolutely. I'll give you one last one. So now you've done all these great things and it's time to go home, but Australia is still doing their thing and Europe is still doing its thing and you're distracted. So go into your family and do a technique I call trapping yourself in a promise. What you're going to do is, all you do is you come into the family room, whatever, and you just say, well, work is over for the day, or I'm done, all done for the night. And once you've said that out loud, now you're trapped because they heard you. So they heard you make this declarative promise that you're finished. And if you happen to have people listening who live alone, you can find a boundary buddy and send them a text and just says work is over or done for the weekend. And once you've stated it, even for your own ears to hear, it does create a little bit of a line in the sand from which it's harder to take another sip of that laptop.
It's very good. And I think my kids will be very good at holding me accountable.
Yeah, they do,
promise.
Right?
I got to be careful. And so they'll take
don't say it till you're ready. Be really careful.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think it's very, I mean, when you were saying that, I'm thinking, I should just even say, my son would love it if I said, you can go put my phone away and not give it back to me.
Oh,
he would have a ton of fun with that.
Okay, that's the greatest thing. I'm writing that down. How old is your son?
He's 6.
Oh, yes. Give him the phone. Yes, I love it.
But he can't watch it. He'll take it and he'll go watch it.
That might be a problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but no, I think you have fun putting it away, and then at least there's kind of like the family time where when work is done for the day and it's dinner time and all that good stuff, it's like, hey, go back and then you can give this back to me when I at the end of the night. Where typically there are times when I will catch up, do a few things after everybody's gone to bed, but it would just sort of create this block where there's no phone. And the phone's the big problem, because again, I see a banner, it then puts it into my realm of consciousness, and now I'm not present. I'm back there thinking about whatever.
No, but not anymore. You don't, right?
Not anymore. This has been fantastic. Tell me, we've kind of gone into me. We could go on for hours talking about these things. I mean, I'm already feeling lighter and more refreshed just thinking about what's going to improve my days. I'm sure our listener right now is loving this and wanting to learn more. Tell us a bit about your book, and why should our listener rush out and buy that?
Oh, that's such a sweet offer. Well, our book, A Minute to Think, was written for 2 reasons. One is to tell people who are busy and overloaded that they are not alone. And the next was to give them a specific action plan to find their way out of the woods of busyness. So if you do buy the book, which obviously we would love, those Amazon reviews are very important too. But if you do buy it, the most important thing is to find at least one buddy to read it with. That can be the person you work with, or your spouse, or your team, or your larger team. But once you start dialogue about these habits that we're talking about, they get much, much easier to do. And you can do it alone for sure. You can absolutely benefit from reading the book alone. But making a tiny cohort is the very, very best way to explore the material. And if you like, we'll even give you a book club study guide with questions that you can ask as you go along.
Beautiful. And if they want to get that book club study guide, how would they get that?
They would go to julietfunt.com and send us an email. They're also going to see a great test that you can take with your team called the Busyness test, and it will tell them more about how to access more creative thinking time by understanding where their busyness is coming from.
Beautiful. Well, our listener has a community, the Successful Bookkeeper community. They can find lots of people, I'm sure, do a book club in the Facebook group. And
that's a great idea.
Yeah, get a group together. Organize it, make it happen, and you're never alone in this community to do something like that. And I think what an opportunity with a book like A Minute to Think. We've just discussed the power of what can happen when we do take a bit more time, create a bit more white space, as you say, in our lives. It will lead to, if anything, the most important thing, which is more presence with the ones we love.
I concur. Beautiful sentiment to close us out.
Beautiful. Well, Julie, on behalf of our listeners, I want to thank you for generously coming on the show and sharing what you know about this topic and for helping us out. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.